Charlie had never acted like this before. Every single day, he'd walk straight to the hallway mirror, paw at it, growl softly, and just sit there, staring. At first, they thought he was just being weird, but when they finally took the mirror down, what they found behind it made their blood run cold. This story is about a family who almost ignored the warning signs and the unbelievable thing hiding behind an ordinary hallway mirror, something that could have changed their lives forever or even ended them. You're not going to forget this one. Charlie had never been a difficult dog. In fact, if you asked the Graysons, they'd tell you he was almost too good, the kind of dog who never chewed shoes, never barked without reason, and somehow always seemed to know when you needed a quiet cuddle on the couch. But that changed one Thursday morning. It started like any other day. The kids rushed out the door for school, their backpacks bouncing, and Charlie did his usual lap around the house to check if any crumbs had been dropped during breakfast. But this time, he stopped at the hallway. He sat in front of the mirror, stared, tipped his head to the left, then pawed it, once, twice, then again. Melissa, the mom, didn't think much of it. Dogs do weird things sometimes. Maybe he saw his reflection and thought it was another dog. Maybe the sun was hitting it just right. She smiled, told him he was being silly, and called him over. He came. End of story. Or so she thought. But the next morning, there he was again. Same spot, same stare, same pawing at the glass. This time he barked. It wasn't loud, just one sharp bark, like he was trying to say something. Then he whined, a low, pitiful sound like he was hurting, but physically, he was fine. Melissa's husband, Tom, had just stepped out of the shower and poked his head into the hallway. What's he doing? I don't know. He's been doing this since yesterday. Tom walked over, crouched down next to Charlie, and looked in the mirror. Nothing here, he said, tapping the mirror lightly. Just his reflection. Maybe he's confused. But the thing was, Charlie wasn't confused. He wasn't barking at the mirror. He was barking through it, like someone was behind it. They let it go, for a while. But every single day, Charlie kept doing the same thing. He'd eat less, sleep only near the hallway. He wouldn't play anymore. He stopped bringing the kids his favorite ball when they got home from school. And at night, he'd get up and pace, back and forth, always ending up in front of that mirror. By the second week, the Graysons weren't just concerned. They were uneasy. This wasn't quirky behavior anymore. Something was wrong. Melissa tried putting a blanket over the mirror, thinking maybe that would stop whatever was bothering him. But Charlie clawed at it, pulling it down. He wouldn't let it be covered. Not for long. Tom thought maybe it was medical. Maybe Charlie was having some kind of episode. Seizures, a neurological problem. They took him to the vet. The vet ran blood work, checked his eyes, did a full exam. Charlie's perfectly healthy, the vet said with a small shrug. A little anxious maybe, but nothing to worry about. No physical issues at all. They went home even more confused than before. That night, something happened. Around 2 a.m., Melissa woke up to a thump, then another. She sat up, heart pounding, and listened. Thump, scratch, thump. She got up quietly, not wanting to wake Tom, and padded into the hallway. There was Charlie, front leg stiff, staring, growling. But what really chilled her was that his fur was standing straight up along his back. His tail wasn't wagging. His mouth wasn't open like it usually was when he was happy or excited. He was afraid. Charlie turned to look at her, eyes wide and glinting in the hallway light, then let out a low, rumbling growl and scratched at the mirror again. Melissa's stomach turned. She didn't know why. There was no reason for it, just a mirror on the wall. But something about the way Charlie stared at it through it made her feel like she was missing something, like they all were. And deep down, she started to wonder, was he trying to warn them? The next morning, Melissa told Tom everything. The noises, the growling, the way Charlie looked, not just alert, but like he was standing guard against something she couldn't see. Tom was skeptical. I don't know, Mel, he said over coffee. Maybe he's just getting older. Dogs act strange sometimes. He's what, 7 now? He's not old, she snapped back, more sharply than she meant. And this isn't just strange. He was scared. He doesn't get scared. That was true. Charlie had never been a fearful dog, not during thunderstorms, not around loud trucks, not even when their neighbor's aggressive bulldog lunged at the fence. Charlie stood his ground, but now something invisible had him on edge. Still, Tom brushed it off. Let's just keep an eye on it. But keeping an eye on it wasn't enough, because over the next few days, Charlie started doing something new. He stopped letting anyone near the mirror. The moment someone got close, whether it was one of the kids, Melissa with the vacuum, or Tom walking by with laundry, Charlie would jump up and bark. Once, when their youngest son Jacob tried to touch the mirror, Charlie nudged him back, gently but firmly. then stood between him and the glass like a wall. "Whoa, buddy," Jacob said, laughing nervously. "It's just a mirror." But Charlie wasn't laughing. His eyes were serious, focused, protective. It was like he knew something they didn't. By now, the whole family felt it. That weird off energy, not just around the mirror, but in the entire hallway. A cold spot, almost. You'd feel fine in the living room, fine in the kitchen, but the second you stepped into the hallway, the air felt heavy, quiet, like something was watching. Melissa started avoiding that part of the house altogether. She didn't say it out loud, but deep down, she was afraid, not just of what Charlie might be sensing, but of the possibility that whatever it was, he might be right. Then came the smell. It was subtle at first, a faint, musty odor, like damp wood or old dirt. Melissa noticed it when she was dusting the hallway shelves. She sniffed around and made a face. "Ugh, it smells weird over here." Tom smelled it too. "It's probably just the drywall behind the mirror," he said, tapping the frame. "Might be mildew or something. We could take it down this weekend and check." But Charlie didn't wait for the weekend. That Friday night, the family was watching a movie in the living room when they heard a loud crack. It wasn't glass breaking, but close. They ran into the hallway, and what they saw left them speechless. Charlie had jumped onto the wall. He wasn't scratching now, he was digging, using his claws like shovels, scraping around the edges of the mirror, where the frame met the wall. Paint chips and drywall dust were scattered everywhere. He turned and looked at them, barked once, then pawed again, hard. Tom swore under his breath. Okay, that's it. We're taking this thing down." They cleared the area, put Charlie in the backyard for a few minutes. He barked nonstop. While they worked, Tom grabbed a screwdriver and started loosening the screws, holding the mirror in place. Melissa held the edges as he worked, heart thudding in her chest. Why was she nervous? It was just a mirror, right? The last screw came out. They pulled the frame gently forward. And then, silence. Not the kind of silence that feels peaceful, the kind that feels wrong. Behind the mirror wasn't just the blank back of the drywall like they'd expected. It was something else. A small, square hole in the wall, about the size of a shoebox. A hidden cavity. And inside it, Melissa gasped. Tom froze. Wrapped in a dirty, crumbling piece of cloth was a small wooden box, covered in dust, tied shut with a brittle, old string. "What the?" Tom whispered. "What is this?" Melissa didn't answer. She couldn't. Her mind was racing. Why was there a box behind their mirror? Who put it there? And why had Charlie been trying desperately to get to it? Tom gently picked up the old wooden box. It was lighter than he expected. Maybe nothing was inside. Maybe this was all just some weird coincidence. But the second he held it, he noticed something strange. The wood felt warm, warmer than it should have been. And the smell, an old, earthy smell, grew stronger, like wet dirt mixed with metal. Melissa stood a few feet back, arms crossed tight across her chest. She wasn't saying anything, but her eyes told the story. She was scared. And Tom, who always joked his way through tense moments, wasn't laughing anymore. He untied the brittle string. The knot snapped apart like it had been waiting for years to fall loose. The lid creaked open. Inside was a small cloth pouch, dirty, yellowed with time. Something round sat inside it, heavy enough to sink to the bottom. Tom carefully lifted the pouch and opened it, and that's when they both stopped breathing. Inside was a silver locket, tarnished, dull, but still clearly shaped like a heart. The chain was broken, and there were scratches all over it like someone had tried to pry it open years ago. Melissa leaned in. "There's something inside." Tom popped the locket open. There, behind a tiny pane of faded plastic, was a photograph. A woman and a little girl, both smiling, both completely unknown to them. They stared at the picture for a long time. "Do you know them?" Melissa finally asked. "No," Tom said. "Never seen them before." "Do you think this belonged to someone who lived here before?" "Has to be." But deep down, they both felt it wasn't that simple. Charlie started barking again from the backyard. Loud, relentless, scratching at the glass door now, like he couldn't take being away from the hallway any longer. They let him in, and he ran straight to the empty spot on the wall. He sniffed, whined, then sat down, eyes still locked on the now exposed hole. He wasn't done, not even close. That night, Tom did something he hadn't done in the 8 years they'd lived in the house. He pulled out the original home purchase documents, the deed, the inspection report, even the seller's disclosure, which no one ever actually reads. There it was, built in 1974. One previous owner before them, a woman named Eleanor Fisher. Tom Googled her name. Nothing. Melissa searched Facebook, Instagram, even those old-school genealogy sites. Still nothing. No recent listings. No obituaries. No online presence at all. That's when she noticed something on the back of the photograph. Inside the locket, in faded ink, barely legible, were two names, Eleanor and Becca, 1987. So the woman must have been Eleanor. And the girl her daughter? Now things started clicking. Melissa whispered it aloud. Charlie wasn't just reacting to the mirror. He was reacting to what was behind it, and maybe who it belonged to. The idea seemed far-fetched. But was it? Charlie had never shown this kind of obsession with anything. Not toys, not food, not even his favorite bone. But this was different. Every time he passed that hallway, he'd pause, look up at the wall, tail stiff, ears alert, like he was waiting for something or someone. Melissa found herself whispering to him, late at night, when no one was around. "What are you seeing, boy?" He'd tilt his head. "Why?" As if he wished he could explain. A few days later, Melissa made a call. She dialed the number of the real estate agent who'd sold them the house nearly a decade earlier. Her name was Carol, an older woman, now semi-retired. "Hi, Carol. I know this is a little random," Melissa said nervously, "but we found something hidden behind the mirror in the hallway. It looked like it belonged to the previous owner, Eleanor Fisher." There was a pause on the other end. Then Carol said something that made Melissa's heart skip. "Eleanor didn't live there alone," she said softly. "She had a daughter, Becca, beautiful little girl. Do you know what happened to them?" Another pause. "I probably shouldn't say too much, but there were rumors. The daughter disappeared. No one knew what happened. One day, she was just gone. Eleanor never recovered, sold the house a few years later, and disappeared too." Melissa felt her stomach drop. She looked down at Charlie, who was laying by her feet, wide awake, and staring at the hallway again. Something wasn't right. Something had happened in that house, and Charlie somehow knew. Later that week, Tom was in the garage when he noticed something odd on the old blueprint of the house. There was a tiny mark, barely visible, showing what looked like a second closet behind the hallway. But they only had one. He called Melissa over. They held the print up side by side with the current layout of the hallway. "That shouldn't be there," she said, pointing at the unmarked wall beside where the mirror had hung. Tom knocked on it. "Hollow." Melissa's eyes widened. "There's a space behind it." It was almost like the wall was hiding a secret passage, or something someone didn't want to be found. They didn't waste time. Tom grabbed a hammer and carefully removed the rest of the drywall behind the mirror. Dust spilled out thick, heavy, and old. Behind it was a narrow, sealed-up closet. No doorknob, just a blank wooden panel. When they finally pried it open, a wave of cold air hit their faces, stale and untouched. Inside, dusty children's clothes hanging on rusted hooks, a broken plastic doll, a tiny pair of pink shoes, and taped to the back wall, nearly falling apart, was a torn page from a diary. Melissa's hands shook as she read it. "Mom says I can't go outside anymore. She says people are asking questions, but I just want to play with Charlie. He's the only one who listens to me. I miss Daddy." Melissa looked up slowly. Charlie, the name in the diary, the same as their dog, but their Charlie was only 6 years old. Still, it was like the past and present had collided in the most impossible way. They sat in silence for a long time that night. "Do you think it's just a coincidence?" Tom asked. Melissa shook her head. "No, I don't think it is." She pointed to Charlie, now curled up near the empty space where the mirror had been, still watching, still alert, like a soldier standing guard over something long forgotten. Charlie's never acted like this before, ever. He knew. He felt it. Tom didn't argue. They both knew, deep down, that this wasn't about a dog chasing shadows or reflections. It was something else. Charlie had led them to a piece of the past, one that had been hidden for decades, a memory trapped behind drywall and silence, a story that was never supposed to come out, and he wasn't finished yet. Melissa dove into research. She dug through archived newspapers from the late 1980s, and eventually, she found it. An old article from 1988. Headline: "Local girl still missing. Case goes cold. Becca Fisher, age 7. Last seen in her backyard. No signs of struggle. No evidence of abduction. Just gone." Police questioned her mother, Eleanor, but nothing ever came of it. Then, a strange paragraph at the end of the article. Neighbors reported hearing barking and scratching near the hallway wall the night before the girl disappeared. Police dismissed it as the family dog reacting to stress. Melissa gasped. That was the same wall. Charlie, their Charlie, whimpered softly nearby, as if he recognized the name. Was it possible? Was it even remotely possible that their dog wasn't just a dog, that he was somehow connected to the past? That night, as they tried to sleep, Melissa couldn't stop thinking about Becca. A little girl, trapped, forgotten. Was that hidden closet some kind of punishment room? A hiding place? Or something worse? And why did Eleanor never speak out? Melissa turned to Tom and whispered, "I think Charlie was sent here for a reason." Tom didn't respond right away, but finally, he said, "Whatever it is, he led us to it. Maybe it's up to us now to finish what she couldn't." The next morning, Charlie went back to pawing at the floor near the wall. Not the mirror spot anymore. This time, it was the baseboard just beneath where the closet had been sealed. He scratched, barked, then stepped back, waiting. Tom bent down and tapped the board. Another hollow echo. Another hidden compartment? They looked at each other. Whatever was buried beneath that house, Charlie was determined to uncover it. He wasn't just being protective. He was pointing the way. The morning after the strange sound behind the mirror, the whole house felt different. Not louder, not busier, just heavier, like the air carried a kind of weight no one could quite name. Charlie hadn't moved an inch from the hallway. His golden fur was slightly ruffled, his eyes wide and locked on the mirror like he was guarding something or someone. Rachel, the mother of the family, crouched beside him again. "Charlie, baby, what is it? What are you seeing?" He didn't bark this time, just let out a low, almost mournful whine, the kind dogs make when they're trying to say something no human language can quite translate. That's when Tom, the dad, made a decision. "All right," he said, already reaching for the screwdriver set. "We're taking this thing down, right now." No one questioned him. The mirror had been there when they bought the house. It was one of those tall, vintage ones, framed in carved oak, bolted straight into the wall. It seemed odd to put a mirror there in the first place. It wasn't even facing anything interesting, but like most things that came with the house, they left it alone. It never gave them a reason not to. Until now, Tom started unscrewing the frame. It was tougher than expected. The bolts were old, rusted, and seemed almost jammed, as if someone had really wanted this thing to stay put. The kids, Ella and Josh, stood nearby, silent, watching every move. And Charlie, he didn't budge, just stood there, tail still, ears forward, breathing hard. Finally, the last screw gave way with a metallic pop. Tom braced himself and slowly lifted the mirror off the wall, leaning it carefully against the opposite side of the hallway. And that's when they all saw it. Not just drywall, not bricks, but a door, a small, narrow, rectangular cutout in the wall behind where the mirror had hung. Almost invisible unless you were looking right at it. The edges were rough, hastily done, like someone had made it in a hurry. There was no handle, no knob, just a thin slit, like a piece of paneling had been pried open and then shoved shut again. "What the?" Rachel whispered, taking a step closer. Tom leaned in and tapped the wall with his knuckle. "Hollow, definitely hollow." "Is that a closet?" Ella asked, her voice a little shaky. "I don't know," Tom answered, "but somebody didn't want it found." Rachel looked down at Charlie. He was now standing directly in front of the panel, nose just inches away from the seam in the wall. He gave a small, impatient huff, then looked back at them, like he was saying, "Open it." Tom ran his fingers along the edge of the hidden panel. "There's no latch," he muttered, "but maybe we can pry it open." He disappeared into the garage and came back with a flathead screwdriver and a small crowbar. By now, even the kids were holding their breath. It was like everyone in the house had the same thought, but no one dared say it out loud. What if someone hid something here, and not something good? Tom wedged the screwdriver into the seam and gently pushed. The wood creaked. Something cracked. Charlie backed up a step but stayed close, eyes never leaving the hidden door. With one last shove, the panel snapped open. Dust flew into the hallway, making everyone cough. Rachel pulled her shirt over her nose. The kids blinked rapidly. And Charlie, he just kept staring. Inside was darkness. Tom shined his phone's flashlight into the space. It was barely big enough for one person to stand in. A small, unfinished area. No paint, no insulation, just a hollow gap between walls, like a mini room that was never supposed to exist. "What is this place?" Rachel whispered, inching forward. The beam of light scanned the space. At first, it looked empty, but then Ella gasped. "There's something on the floor." They all leaned in. It was a box. A small, wooden box with a metal latch. Old, covered in dust, but intact. Charlie let out a low bark. Not aggressive, not scared. Almost like he was confirming something. "Yes, that's what I've been trying to tell you." Tom reached inside and carefully pulled the box out. It was heavier than it looked. He set it on the hallway floor, crouched beside it, and hesitated. "Should we open it?" Nobody answered. Instead, they all just watched. The latch clicked open easily. No lock, no resistance. Inside, there were photos. Stacks of them, faded, curled at the edges, black and white. A few color prints from the 80s or 90s. Faces they didn't recognize. Children, adults, some smiling, some not. Some photos had been torn in half. Others were scribbled on in black marker. Angry words, crossed out names. What is this? Rachel breathed. Then Josh spotted something else. There's papers under the photos. Tom carefully lifted them out. They were letters, dozens of them, handwritten in shaky, messy cursive, most addressed to someone named Ellen. The messages were disturbing, half-finished thoughts, mentions of hiding, of someone watching, of secrets never meant to be found. Rachel read one out loud. They said I was crazy, but I heard them again last night, behind the mirror, laughing, whispering. I don't know what they want, but I know they're not gone. A chill ran down everyone's spine. Even Charlie let out a soft whimper, then pressed his body closer to Rachel. Do you think someone lived here? Ella asked, voice barely above a whisper. I think, Tom began but stopped, because suddenly, the hallway felt colder, like the house itself was listening. Rachel held the letter for a long moment, staring at the shaky handwriting. The words seemed to vibrate in the air. Behind the mirror, laughing, whispering, she could almost hear the words echoing in her mind. Tom, what do you think this means? She asked, her voice quieter now, unsure if she really wanted an answer. Tom didn't respond immediately. His mind was racing, turning over the possibilities. Who was Ellen? And why had someone gone to such lengths to hide these letters, to hide this box? He glanced at the photos scattered across the floor. One in particular caught his eye. It was an image of a young woman, perhaps in her 20s, standing next to an old, familiar-looking house. The same house they were living in, but it was different in the photo. The yard looked overgrown, and the windows were dark, like the house hadn't been lived in for years. Rachel, Tom said, his voice tight. This house, it was here before we moved in. Rachel's hand trembled as she picked up the photo. What do you mean? This woman, she's standing in front of this house, but there's no sign of life. It looks like a ghost house, abandoned. Who is she? Rachel asked, heart sinking. Tom shook his head. I don't know, but maybe we're looking at something much darker than we thought. Charlie, who had been unusually quiet, let out a soft whine. It wasn't like his usual excited bark. This was a deep, drawn-out sound. He was agitated again, pacing back and forth near the panel in the wall. Every few steps, he'd stop, stare at it, and then continue pacing. Rachel watched him, confused. What is it, boy? You know something we don't. Ella crouched down next to Charlie, rubbing his ears gently. Maybe he's trying to tell us something, she said softly, her voice full of wonder, but also worry. Tom turned back to the box, feeling a sense of dread wash over him. Something about this whole situation felt wrong. This wasn't just a random discovery. This wasn't a forgotten closet or some old box someone left behind. Someone had wanted this to be hidden, and they had gone to great lengths to make sure it stayed that way. You think this has anything to do with Charlie? Rachel asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Tom didn't answer right away. He just watched Charlie, who had now stopped pacing and was sitting still in front of the wall again, staring at the panel as if waiting. And then, as if on cue, Charlie stood up and walked toward the panel, pressing his nose against the edge. His tail flicked once, twice. He nudged it, then looked back at Tom and Rachel, his eyes wide and filled with urgency. The moment was heavy. The house was quiet, too quiet. Even the air seemed to stand still. I don't know, Tom said, swallowing hard, but I think we're about to find out. With Charlie still watching, Tom took a deep breath, then reached out to touch the panel again. This time, he didn't hesitate. He wasn't going to leave this question unanswered. Here goes nothing, he murmured to himself, then began to pry the panel open once again. The wall creaked in protest. The tension in the room mounted. Rachel stepped back, holding her breath. Ella grabbed her mother's hand, her heart racing. The air felt thicker now, the kind of weight you feel when you know something is about to change, something you can't come back from. And then, with a final, agonizing pull, the panel gave way. The panel came loose with a final, sharp crack, and the space behind it seemed to exhale, releasing the stale air that had been trapped for years. Tom, his heart pounding, cautiously pulled the panel aside. For a brief moment, all he could do was stare into the darkness. It felt like the room itself was holding its breath. Charlie stood perfectly still, no longer pacing or whimpering. His eyes were locked on the newly exposed space. Rachel took a slow step forward, peering into the shadows. It's just more of the wall, she said, her voice filled with uncertainty. But Tom's hand trembled as he reached for the flashlight once more. No, there's something here, he said, his voice low, as if afraid to disturb the silence that hung in the air. He shone the light inside. It illuminated a small, dusty room, the size of a closet. Nothing was in it except the remnants of some old, shredded fabric, ripped clothes, ragged blankets. It was hard to tell, but then, near the back of the small space, something caught the light. Tom's breath caught in his throat. A small, wooden crate, almost identical to the box they had found earlier. Another one? Rachel gasped. What the heck is all of this? Tom didn't answer. His fingers were already working to remove the debris in the corner of the room. A pile of torn blankets shifted, and the crate came into full view. He reached for it, feeling the weight of it in his hands. Just as he lifted it, the floor creaked under his feet, and then, almost as if it had been waiting for him to touch the box, a strange noise echoed from deep within the wall. A whisper. It was soft at first, faint, like the echo of a voice long buried. Rachel froze, eyes wide, her heart leaping into her throat. Did you hear that? Tom's grip on the crate tightened. I heard it, he whispered back. But that doesn't make sense. No one else is here. Charlie's reaction was immediate. He let out a sharp bark, then crouched low to the ground, his body tense, his eyes fixed on the crate Tom was holding. He growled, just a low, menacing rumble that made everyone in the room take a step back. Tom took a deep breath. It's just an old house settling. It's nothing. But deep down, he didn't believe it. The whispers weren't the house settling. No house settled like this. It felt alive, like something had been waiting for them to open it. Still, he couldn't stop himself. His hands, now shaking more than before, pulled open the crate. Inside, there were more photographs, more letters, but this time, there was something different. A necklace, a delicate gold chain, tarnished with age. The pendant was a small, silver heart, engraved with initials. A chill crept up Tom's spine. The initials were familiar, too familiar. He stared at them for a moment before he realized why. They matched the initials on the letter Rachel had read aloud earlier. The same initials from the message that spoke of someone watching, of someone hiding. Ellen, Rachel whispered. Tom looked up, eyes wide. I think we found her. But there was no time to think. The whispering grew louder. It wasn't the house settling anymore. It was a voice from behind the walls. And it was waiting. Charlie's growl deepened. Tom set the crate down carefully. I don't think we should be here, he said, his voice tight, filled with a sense of dread. I don't think we're meant to find this. Rachel swallowed hard, trying to steady her breath. But we've come this far. We can't stop now. We have to. Tom's voice was firm. This is dangerous. We don't know what's behind this. We don't know who or what put all this here. Suddenly, they heard a loud thud from upstairs. Bang! It echoed through the house, shaking the very foundation. The thud echoed through the house, shaking the walls. It was louder than anything they had heard before. The air in the room suddenly felt colder, thicker, as if the entire house was holding its breath along with them. Charlie's ears perked up, his growl turning into a low, continuous rumble that vibrated through the floor. He was on edge, every muscle tensed, his eyes darting nervously between Tom, Rachel, and the walls. It was as if the dog knew that something was coming, and whatever it wasn't good. Tom swallowed, trying to steady his shaking hands. The crate with the photos and the necklace sat in front of him, but all he could think about was the noise from upstairs. It was as though something, or someone, was waiting for them to move, to make the next move. That sound, Rachel whispered, her voice tight with fear. It came from upstairs. Tom nodded, his gaze shifting to the stairs. His instincts were screaming at him to leave, to get out of the house, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the edge of something bigger than they could understand. We need to check it out, Rachel said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. We've come this far. We can't back down now. Tom looked at her, then at Charlie. The dog's eyes were locked on the stairs, his body rigid, tail low, almost as if he were preparing for something dangerous. You're right, Tom said finally, though the words felt heavy on his tongue. Let's go. They crept toward the stairs, the sound of their footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. With each step, the house seemed to groan, the floorboards creaking beneath their weight. The air grew colder still, and the whispering from behind the walls continued, faint but unmistakable. Do you hear that? Rachel asked, her voice barely a whisper. Tom nodded. The whispers were getting louder, clearer. They weren't random sounds anymore. It was as if the house itself was speaking to them, beckoning them to discover the truth. They reached the top of the stairs, and Charlie suddenly stopped, refusing to move forward. His eyes were fixed on the door at the end of the hallway. It was closed, but the energy in the room had shifted. There was something there, something that had been waiting for them all along. Rachel hesitated, looking at Tom. Should we? But before she could finish her sentence, the door at the end of the hall creaked open, slowly, unnaturally slow. Click. It was as if someone had released a latch from inside the room, allowing the door to swing open by itself. The cold air rushed out into the hallway, and the whispering grew louder. Charlie growled, stepping forward. His fur stood on end, and his eyes never left the doorway. He seemed to know exactly what was coming. With a deep breath, Tom walked toward the door, his heart pounding in his chest. Rachel was right behind him, the unease in her eyes matching his own. They entered the room, the air thick with the scent of old wood and dust. But what they saw took their breath away. The walls were lined with more photographs, dozens, maybe hundreds, each one showing the house in various stages of decay. There were pictures of Ellen, the woman from the photos they had found earlier. But in every single one, her expression was the same, a smile. But it wasn't a happy smile. It was a knowing smile, like she knew something they didn't. At the center of the room, there was a large, ornate mirror, the same mirror Charlie had been pawing at for days. But there was something different about it now. The reflection was off. It wasn't showing them. It was showing the past. The images in the mirror flickered like old film. They saw the house as it once was. Young children playing in the yard, a happy family gathered for dinner, people laughing, talking, living. But there was something unsettling about the way the images changed. The people in the photos weren't smiling anymore. They were staring straight ahead, at them. Rachel gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "What is this? What is going on?" Tom's voice trembled as he looked into the mirror. I think it's trying to show us something we were never meant to see." Suddenly, the whispering stopped. Everything went silent. Then Charlie lunged forward. Charlie's sudden movement took them both by surprise. The dog, usually so calm and controlled, was now in full protective mode. His muscles tensed as he lunged toward the mirror, barking furiously. The sound of his barks echoed off the walls, adding to the already tense atmosphere. Tom reached for Charlie, but before he could grab the leash, something strange happened. The mirror flickered again. The images in the reflection shifted, morphing into something darker. At first, Tom thought it was just the light playing tricks, but then he realized it wasn't just the images. It was as if the mirror itself was coming to life. Suddenly, a voice, low, almost guttural, whispered from the reflection, "Leave." Tom froze, his heart pounding in his chest. The voice was unmistakable. It wasn't just an echo from the past. It was real, and it was coming from the mirror itself. Rachel took a step back, her eyes wide with fear. "Did you hear that? It had told us to leave." But Charlie wasn't backing down. The dog was growling fiercely now, his paws planted firmly on the floor, his eyes locked onto the mirror. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't going to let anything get past him. Tom could feel a chill crawling up his spine. There was something alive in the reflection, something malevolent, something that had been waiting for them to open this door. He reached out to touch the mirror, as if drawn to it by some unseen force. The moment his fingers brushed the cold surface, everything changed. The room around them seemed to bend. The walls, the ceiling, the floor, they all warped, as if the very fabric of reality was being pulled into the reflection. The pictures on the wall blurred, shifting in and out of focus, until everything turned to darkness. Then a flash. For just a second, Tom saw something that he would never forget. A woman, Ellen. She was standing in front of the mirror, her face twisted in a grimace. Her eyes were wide with terror, and her hands were pressed against the glass, as if trying to get out. Behind her, in the dim light of the reflection, shadows danced, reaching out toward her. "Ellen!" Rachel gasped, her voice barely audible. Tom's heart raced. He could see it now, the truth that had been hidden all along. Ellen wasn't just a part of the house's history. She was trapped in it, trapped in the mirror. Before they could react, the whispering returned. Louder now, urgent, "Help me." It was Ellen's voice, but it wasn't just a plea. It was a command. Charlie, sensing the danger, barked once more, his voice raw with desperation. He was trying to warn them. The dog was the only one who seemed to understand. Suddenly, the mirror shattered. It wasn't a slow break. It was as if something, or someone, had thrown a force at it, cracking the glass into a million pieces in an instant. Tom and Rachel stumbled backward, their hearts in their throats as shards of glass fell to the floor like confetti. The sound was deafening. Then silence. Charlie stopped barking. The room fell still. Everything was different. Tom and Rachel stood there, staring at the remnants of the mirror, their breath coming in sharp gasps. The air was heavy with the presence of something they couldn't explain. Then, in the dim light of the room, something caught Tom's eye. A small scrap of paper, half hidden under a pile of broken glass. His hand shook as he picked it up. It was a note. The handwriting was shaky, the ink faded, but the message was clear. The mirror is the key. Break it, and you break the curse. Save her. Save us. Tom's hand trembled as he held the note. The words blurred before his eyes as he processed what it meant. Break the curse. The weight of the message hit him like a ton of bricks. It wasn't just about a hidden secret or a restless spirit. It was a battle for freedom, for Ellen, for the house, and for them. Rachel stood beside him, her eyes wide with disbelief. This can't be real, she whispered, her voice strained with emotion. How do we even begin to understand all this? Charlie's low whine interrupted her thoughts. The dog was pacing back and forth, his gaze still locked on the fragments of the broken mirror. It was as if he knew that the key to ending whatever curse haunted the house lay right before them. Tom felt a sudden urge to do something, anything. He had to act, or else they would all be trapped in the same dark web of mystery that had ensnared Ellen. He glanced at Charlie, who, despite the danger, stood unwavering, his body tense and alert. The mirror is the key. It wasn't just a warning, it was a guide. The broken mirror still held power, even in its shattered form. The moment the glass had fractured, a dark force had been released into the air, but not all of it had been freed. A small piece of something, the curse, the essence of what had trapped Ellen, still lingered. Without saying a word, Tom knelt down and began gathering the broken shards of glass. He didn't know why, he just felt compelled to do it. Rachel watched in stunned silence, unsure whether she should stop him or let him continue. But Charlie understood. The dog stayed close, his presence a reassuring force, as if giving Tom permission to go on. The pieces were cold to the touch, but Tom didn't flinch. He gathered them together, slowly at first, then with increasing urgency as he felt something change in the air. As he collected the shards, he noticed something else. Behind the fragments of glass, beneath the dust and dirt, there was a faint engraving. The edges of the broken pieces seemed to align, revealing a hidden message carved into the wood of the wall behind the mirror. Tom's heart skipped a beat as he read the inscription aloud. Only the purest heart can break the chains. Only the loyal can free the lost. His voice faltered, the meaning settling heavily on his chest. Charlie had been the one to discover the mirror. The dog had known all along what it would take to end this, to bring peace to the restless soul that had been trapped in this house. And now, Charlie was their guide. Tom looked at Rachel, who was still standing at a distance, her hand over her mouth as she processed everything. "We have to finish this," Tom said, his voice steady but filled with determination. "It's the only way to end it, for Ellen, for all of us." Charlie sat at his feet, his eyes calm now, as if he understood that the moment had arrived. Tom placed the final shard in his hand. The moment the pieces clicked together, something shifted. The ground beneath their feet seemed to tremble. The house, once so heavy with the weight of the curse, now felt lighter. The air cleared, as though a dark cloud had been lifted. Suddenly, the door to the room slammed shut behind them. The whispering returned, but this time, it was no longer filled with fear. It was a calm, peaceful voice, a soft sigh of relief that echoed through the walls. "I'm free," the voice said, clear and serene. It was Ellen's voice, but no longer filled with torment. "Thank you." The room, the house, everything around them changed. The walls brightened, the atmosphere lightened, and the shadows that had once clung to every corner faded away. It was as if the house was finally at peace. Charlie barked once, a joyful sound that broke through the lingering tension in the air. His tail wagged, and for the first time in days, he seemed at ease. The weight that had pressed on him, and on all of them, was gone. The curse was lifted. Tom and Rachel stood in awe, realizing that they had not only freed a trapped soul, but they had also uncovered a bond that went deeper than they had ever known. They had learned that some forces, some mysteries, could only be understood through trust, loyalty, and love. And Charlie, their golden retriever, had been their guide all along. The house, once dark and haunted, now felt like a home again. The curse had been broken. The restless spirit of Ellen was finally at peace, and the house was free from the shadows that had loomed over it for so long. But the real lesson in all of this was clear. Sometimes, the ones we think we understand the least, our pets, are the ones who know exactly what's going on. Charlie had seen what they couldn't, sensed what they didn't, and in the end, it was his loyalty and bravery that saved them all. As they walked out of the room, the house felt different, lighter, like the weight of the past had been lifted, and in its place, there was a new beginning. If you enjoyed this heartwarming story, make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for more incredible tales of love, loyalty, and the unbreakable bond between pets and their families.